Hello everyone, and welcome to our worship service this morning. It is March 27th, or the fourth Sunday in Lent. Today we have a parable about losing your way. It's when you look in the wrong places for what you really need. What is it about us that we so easily hesitate to trust God? From Adam and Eve to the lost son to me and you, it's so easy to look to the wrong things, the wrong people, the wrong places. Maybe a part of the reason is we truly forget what God is like. Today, Jesus reminds us of what God is like. We have a reading from Luke, the parable of the lost son, or maybe a better title would be The Lost Sons, because it ends up that both boys are kind of lost. A reading from Luke 15. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, "This man welcomes sinners and eats with them." And then Jesus told them this parable. There was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided the property between them. And not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. And after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. And when he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son, and he threw his arms around him, and he kissed him. The son said, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven, I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and sandals for his feet. And bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. And when he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. And so he called one of his servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So the father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you, and I never disobeyed your orders, and yet you never gave me one young goat that I could celebrate with my friends. And when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fatted calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you're always with me, and everything I have is yours.' But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." Today we have the parable of the lost son, possibly one of the most well-known parables that Jesus gave. I I'm amazed at this parable because I've read it many times, and again I was just struck this week with a whole other level of insight. I can see why it's a favourite parable. You know, Jesus' parables, by the way, they're not always this straightforward. Not that this is completely straightforward, but you know, some of his parables are quite obtuse and they're difficult to understand. In fact, even his students would say, you know, once the crowds had left, what were you talking about? What did that mean? You know, when he gave the parable of the sower, it was just confusing to them. So it's a different way of teaching. You know, all the rabbis, by the way, in Jesus' day would speak in parables, and they're stories that they're supposed to pique our interest, our curiosity, really. They're supposed to pique our curiosity about life, about God, about how to live. And the parable encourages us to use our imagination, to try and, you know, think about life or God. Particularly this one is about God, the Father. Think about God in a different way, a new way, perhaps a deeper way than what we have previously. So in this parable, as I said, a little bit more straightforward because it's about a father with two sons. And there's family dynamics in this story. And sometimes parables tell us something that we've never considered before. They reveal that to us. Sometimes parables give us truth that we find it awfully hard to believe. Could it possibly be true? Could it really be this way? I think this parable is a little bit got some of that in it. Parables give us information at some level that we just either we've never ever considered it or we've forgotten it. So the lost son, remember the old name was the Prodigal Son, and prodigal means extravagant. It's extravagance, which is what he does with his inheritance. So the story is that obviously the son, the young son, is certainly not happy at home. He's not happy at all. And he wants his share of his inheritance now, which is like saying, Father, you're dead to me. I want out of here. I want away from this family. I am not happy. I want to get as far away as possible and get a life, do something fun and get out of here. Surprisingly enough, the father actually gives him his inheritance. He gives the younger son a third, because remember there's the eldest brother, gives him a third, and he leaves. The young son leaves, he goes off to the far country, and he leads this extravagant, wasteful lifestyle. He just squanders the whole thing. And this is him, I suppose, trying to, you know, find life and find what life's all about and meaning and adventure and, you know, everything else that people want in life. He loses all the money on this sort of wasteful, extravagant living and decides that he needs to work. And so he ends up being hired out as a hired hand, and he ends up working with the pigs, which, by the way, in that culture would be a terrible thing for a Jewish person to work with pigs, because pigs were seen as unclean animals. So it's like the story's telling us this son couldn't get any lower than this. He's actually working with pigs. He's so hungry, he wants to even eat the pods that he's feeding the pigs. So there he is, standing in the pigsty, and he's thinking, this is terrible, I have to do something. I have to figure out a way that I can get back. So what I'll do is that I'll tell my father that I've just made an awful mistake, that I'm sorry, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. And maybe the father will, maybe he'll take me on as the hired hand. Maybe. So that's the plan. And so he leaves the far country and he comes back. Now, is he sorry? Is he brokenhearted? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. Text doesn't tell us, but we do know this. He's cashless, he's hungry, and his idea and his plan for finding life and fun and adventure and everything else has crashed around him. That did not work at all. So there he is. Life is not working for him. And you know what I noticed at this time reading was, this is exactly the same thing that happened in Genesis with Adam and Eve. Exactly the same thing in the sense that there they are in the garden, they have everything they need. And yet the serpent comes up and says, you know, you really don't have everything you need. And why don't you go take that fruit from that tree? Did God say that you weren't allowed to eat any of the fruit, by the way? No, they said we're allowed to eat all the fruit, just not the fruit from that one tree of knowledge of good and evil. Oh, the serpent says, you can go ahead and eat that. God doesn't want you. God is holding out on you. God's holding out on you. You better go ahead. It just struck me that this young son, is a little similar. It's like the father's holding out on me. I can't get what I need in this place. I need to leave. I need my inheritance. I need to get out of here. And I need to go find my life elsewhere. That's where happiness is. That's where joy is. That's where adventure is. That's where fun is. That's where excitement is. It's not going to be here with the Father. So everybody, you know, both Adam and Eve, young son, life's always out there. It's a way. It's something that you have to go and get yourself. So there he is. He's working with the pigs and he decides to go back home. And verse 20 tells us that when the young son was far off, the father obviously is watching and waiting for him and sees him come. And he starts to run toward him. So there you have the father running toward the son who's a long way off, obviously looking for him, wondering when he's going to come back. Before the son can start all these apologies, before he can explain about, you know, being a hired hand and everything else, the father flings his arms around him, kisses him. Before he can give his rehearsed speech, the father's like, quick, we're celebrating, he's found, he's back. Put a robe on him, the finest robe, put a ring in his finger, it's an authority symbol. Sandals on his feet. I mean, he's back to, you know, we're rejoicing. Get the fatted calf, we're rejoicing. We're having a party. This son of mine was lost and now he's found. And so the father's joy is just so over the top that this huge party begins. The feast begins. And the eldest son comes home from work and hears all this music and joyous talking and dancing and barbecues and everything else. And he says to the servant, okay, what's going on here? What's the party for? Oh, the servant says, well, your brother came home and your dad's just overjoyed. We're having a big celebration. The fatted calf's out. It's just an amazing thing. And the eldest brother is like, you're kidding me. We're celebrating him after what he's done. He took a third of everything. He took a third and he just wasted it on wild living and parties and prostitutes. And we're celebrating. I'm not going into that party. I'm not having anything to do with them. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm having nothing to do with them at all. I don't approve of it. It's wrong and it's not fair. It is not fair. And so the eldest son stands outside the party. And the father comes out and starts to, he's trying to plead with him. He's, come on in. Your brother was lost, but now he's found. And the eldest son is like, no, it's not fair. You never ever did this for me. You never ever gave me a fatted calf and a big party so that I could have some fun with my friends. In other words, he's thinking, you never made a big fuss of me. You withheld stuff from me. You never did this to me. And the father's like, but son, you've been with me always. Everything I have is yours. I've never withheld a thing from you. Now the father loves both sons. This is what's kind of amazing. Both sons, and they've both got their issues. They're just different kinds of issues, right? The eldest one, he's just offended, and he thinks it's unfair, and he thinks that he never got all this, what this younger one is getting now. He thinks it's just over the top, it's too much. It's like, who behaves this way? The eldest son is thinking to himself, who behaves this way? Now remember, this parable was told to religious people. This parable was told to the Pharisees. They would be the church folk, but it would actually be not just church folk, it would be the pastors. It would be the pastors, that's what it would be like today. The leaders. It's like Jesus is saying, God's like a good father. God's like a good father. It's like, what? What? What do you mean? It's like, who would behave this way with this son? Well, someone that is more concerned about reconciliation than anything else. That's who would do that. Someone who is more concerned about reconciliation than blaming and judging and shaming and correcting and criticizing, all the things that we do in this world. Jesus is indirectly saying God is not like that. God is like a good father. A good father. Now, for many of us, we're going to have to use our imaginations, right? Because maybe we didn't have a good father, but you can imagine what a good parent would be like. You can imagine what a good mother would be like. You can imagine what a good father would be like. Jesus is saying, yeah, well then you're getting just a little bit closer to what God is like. You're getting just a little bit closer. Yeah, it's really, the parable is called the lost son, but it's actually about two lost sons. They're just lost in different ways, because both of these sons cannot receive from the father. Both of them. You don't have to go off to the far country to not receive, right? The young one wants to leave home and get away and find life and adventure and fulfillment and meaning and beauty and whatever else he's after, right? He's thinking real living is out there and I'm going to go for it. It's like, really? Why would you think that you would have to get away from God to find everything you need? Is that what you think about God? Really? It's like Jesus is saying, you have a funny view of God. The eldest brother, he didn't go off to the far country. He didn't leave, but he wasn't happy either. He said, I've just been here slaving for you. You never gave me this fatted calf. All I have done is worked, slaved. In other words, you don't give me enough. It's like everything I have is yours. You can't receive it. You cannot receive it. Even though the Father loves him, the eldest son can't receive that kind of compassion. He can't receive that kind of love. He's cold. He stands outside the party. There's a coldness to him. He sort of refuses to come in. It's like, no, I don't want anything to do with you. This is the way you're going to behave. If this is the way you're going to be, no. So like the eldest one shuts himself off. Both sons don't see the father as the answer to anything. Both sons think that there's something wrong with the father, but there are different ways that they're wrong, but they're both not receiving. Both sons think the father's withholding. Both think the father's not giving enough. Both think the father isn't loving enough or not caring enough to give them what they really think that they need. And again, it's like, what is with that? It's the same thing with Adam and Eve. It was exactly the same thing. The serpent said, God doesn't want you to eat that because God knows if you eat it, you'll be like God. Theme being, if you really want to find life and happiness and purpose and meaning, you have to do it yourself. And God isn't really much in the picture because God sort of just withholds and restricts and stops you from doing things. And it's like, Jesus, really? Is that your picture of God? That God withholds from you and restricts you and stops you from finding joy in life? Wow. Wow. Let me tell you a parable about a lost son. See, it really, really gives us a picture of something that I think is very easy for us to forget, that God withholds nothing good from us. That's a hard thing to allow in, isn't it? It's a hard thing for us. It's a hard thing. But I think that's one of the main themes of this parable is, no good thing will I withhold from you. So there's the prayer. There's the heart cry. God, help me to receive that there's no way that you would ever hold anything that's good away. Amen. Wind is strong and water's deep. I'm not afraid here in these open seas. Your love never fails. The chasm is far too wide. Never thought I'd reach the other side. Your love never fails. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night. Joy comes in the morning. And when the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid. 'Cause I know that you love me. Your love never fails. You